I'm very, very happy to welcome Grainne Mulvey, a woman, a female composer of our days, to the Watchman in conversation. Grainne, hi, nice to meet you and have you.
Hi, Hannah. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm really delighted to be here, and it's great to get this chance to speak to you. Thanks.
Thank you. And there's so many things to read about you, a huge amount of works you have composed and performed, but not that much about your personal background story about your family. Please tell me, how did you grow up and what made you to become a composer?
I grew up in a family that there are five other siblings, and so my family, my father loved music, and my mother she loved it too, but my father was very passionate about classical music. So my earliest memories are of being in the cot singing. I couldn't speak, so I could sing. He would train me when he'd come home from work, and we'd be singing maybe part of a Beethoven symphony or a Mozart symphony. Just he would train me on that level. So there wasn't, because he wasn't a professional musician, this
Yeah.
was my inlet into music. And then I had brothers who were later on very interested in playing rock music and guitar and everything. So that was another side of it. And a mother who was into very light classical kind of musicals, etc., and was constantly singing. The music was always part of the day. Every day was filled with music. No matter
It's
what it was something that was a relief or a release, or it was just there all the time.
it's fascinating in Ireland. The music, the whiskey, it's like a bit of blood of people. It's flowing, isn't it? And then there is this folk music and the classical music, which
Yeah.
sort of mainstream, immediately great. How would you describe this placement of the music in Ireland, in its culture and history? Why it is so musical?
Um, I don't know. It's just it's always been part of our heritage, really. It's part of the culture, especially our ethnic music. I think Gerald of Wales, who visited us centuries ago, was really attracted to the music. That made him kind of reassess his idea of us. He loved our music, and thought that our musicians were the best he'd ever come across. We have a great um, ethnic tradition and great musicians, great players. So there is an oral tradition that has always been there. And if we think of even like blind harpers and the bunting and the collections and the festivals that occurred in 1792, and there was a whole array of musicians and harpers that lived and played the Irish harp, and there's a huge collection left from that, and oral collection as well. So that's always been there. So I think that um music has always been, part of our culture anyway. Classical music, I think, really with the outlets for that, especially when my dad was growing up, was Dublin, where there was a symphony orchestra, and then there was various operas that were put on ever so often, in the early part of the 20th century. So there was it was always there, and
Yeah.
they just immersed it. People just There's always some sort of music. My grandmother used to play the fiddle, but my father said he never saw her play it. So that's kind of something I'm kind of sad, because I was born just after she died,
Yeah.
so we didn't have that connection. But I still feel that that connection maybe is there because she was musical, but because she had, a family, she put that aside to raise them. And so that part of the story, I'm not quite au fait with, or
Have you
totally.
ever played any traditional instrument then?
No, I've never I've never played. I've played fiddle very
Yeah.
scrappily, I can
Yeah.
tell you. I've tried to play. I've done some grades on violin and played in a college orchestra, which
Yeah.
was great fun. And I really loved it because that was kind of education that I had on third level. where people were just involved in playing and performing their own pieces and performing various different repertoire and everything. It was really great fun. So that's where I come from, kind of playing as in an ensemble, etc. I
Mhm.
play piano very badly now. It's like just a tool, really, I'm afraid. I'm just so concentrated, I think, in composition. Now
Yeah.
I'm teaching it as well. So I'm very focused on that. But of course, then you learn all orchestrations and everything else, and you learn how to do that in college and whatever else, so that
Yeah,
side you
but back
yeah.
to the ethno music and traditional Irish music, which is really fascinating. Is in particularly fascinating is the moment that any other cultures they are like like struggling between the ethno music and this classical musical establishment, which seem to be very stiff, and people and the audiences are quite wise. And in the case of Irish music, this bridge is really built and is quite, it's a consistent one. So there is almost no border in between. And that fascinates me personally very much. So I can easily imagine any classical piece played in any Irish music festival and back. Irish music in any classical piece. I played myself lots of very interesting pieces combined with Irish music. So, how exactly does it works in Ireland in Irish music? This bridge to baroque music, to to the music which has been wrote by in the court of Louis XIV and then moved on up to Beethoven, didn't it?
Yes, it did. It continually morphs on. I mean, we have composers that really try that merge Irish music with um, classical or contemporary music as such, contemporary Western music. And we've had several composers involved with that, and they still manage to merge the two styles. One of them was the late Eric Sweeney, who was my teacher. He fused Irish music with a minimalist style, and it works extremely well because of the nature of the kind of repetitious elements within the kind of like within the tune or the reel or whatever. So that works very well. And then we had another um, composer, George Bodley, who has done it in a very different, disparate way, whereas merging with contemporary classical or contemporary Western music. So it's far more, it's a very gritty kind of juxtaposition of both styles,
Mm-hmm.
kind of atonality with modality as Irish music is. So there's always been that fusion, I think, growing all the time. It's growing more and more. We have a whole plethora of different composers involved with styles
Yeah.
that are constantly fusing elements of it, and it's constantly being stretched, and it works. And I think it works quite well as well for other styles, like even spectralism or any of these kind of composers where there's concentration on just kind of drones and things like that as well. So all those elements are fused in, and it's just an ongoing process all the time.
Yeah,
um,
speaking of composition, we have this huge question about the old texts and editions and how to put down the music. So, speaking of original ethno music in Ireland, is the notation of this music and keeping it in any sort of score very different from those what we call the classical music, or it is quite similar?
Well, I mean, Irish music is an oral tradition, so there's been many collectors like Bunting. Brannock is another one that's actually managed to put a couple of volumes of Irish tunes together. So, when they've been collected and that people have had obviously training so that they know about the mordants or the cuts and rolls, all the little, those little elements that are intrinsic to how it operates. But you're just getting a blueprint really when you get the tune, because I mean, there's so many different dialects in Irish music anyway. There's so many different styles. They're all so different from, the different provinces as well. So you have all those issues coming into play.
Mm.
where everything sounds maybe slightly faster or slightly much slower or slightly more or ornamented. If you even compare Shanos in comparison to kind of, it's crazily ornamented nearly by the time, it goes through several renditions of the format.
Mhm.
So all of those things are intrinsic. There isn't a written form as such. It's just been adapted. It's everything is an oral tradition anyway. So
So in a way, similarly to Baroque music or any other music
yeah,
which was relying
yeah,
on variation style, it's quite
yeah.
similar. So actually, we can put it that way that the classical music was not that different earlier, but got there and got so stiff. I don't know whether with the help of editors or without. So whether the editing the music made it that stiff that everyone is completely sure to know every reason of every dot and wedge, or what happened, or this, looking up to a ur text because the composer has said or put it down that way, and it kept that way without thinking of it. But something made the classical music quite stiff, and this, what you mentioned, all what people knew what to do based on the knowledge from before, it disappeared. So as a composer now, you edit your works by yourself, right?
Yes, I do. I have a copyist who's absolutely fantastic because without his help, Joe Farrell, he's just brilliant. Without his help, I would find it really impossible with the software changes. He's just a wizard at all this stuff. But I mean, I actually write, when I'm writing, I write from the page.
Yeah,
Or if I'm working with electronics, I work from the sound. And
yeah,
it doesn't have to be even just the page. Really, it's maybe a sound that you've heard that you document on the page. The page is only a means of describing it for me.
yeah,
Um, I know what kind of mass I want to produce or whatever. So it's just more or less a blueprint because that's the kind of narrative that we have still in place.
mhm,
And it's the one that functions when you give it to players. I mean, if you just go and say to them, improvise,
yeah,
and they have nothing to improvise on, it's a pretty dangerous thing. You just don't know what's going to come out.
yeah, yeah,
So do you take that risk or do you have some sort of instructions without being so kind of rigid? In my scores, I like to have parts where they're free to do parts, and there's other parts that are kind of synchronized, only because you're probably dealing with a conductor, and
yeah,
a conductor needs some sort of benchmark. Also, there's just so many things to getting a piece of music in comparison to hanging a piece of art. There's the rehearsal time.
yeah,
Rehearsal times are always so kind of fraught because they're quite short. It's just there's no money. There's not enough money
yeah,
pumped into
yeah, yeah,
giving people and time things to develop. And the other way, if you have several interpretations, which I love that, the beauty of different interpretations of something,
yes,
uh, you get something different from it. It could be the space, it could be some nuances of how they articulate a passage or how something was played, and that's the beauty of it. So, even if there is a blueprint there,
yeah,
the blueprint is just a blueprint. There's always variations. If you think even about Alfred Brendel in comparison to Horowitz or pianists like that, you just know, like, wow, there's just such differences,
yes.
nuances and things, maybe just time, expression, pacing, that all has a massive function in music. So I think it's great that we can, you can have maybe the blueprint, but you can have variations on it as well.
So you produce the piece, and then you go you hear the first performance, but that is not the final version. So basically, as a composer, you are open to develop the piece
Yeah.
through the time. It's something what is alive, what is not stiff and dead and made up to be, like a holy grail.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah. I think, is anything really a holy grail? When you hear of kind of so many renditions of a Mahler symphony or a Beethoven symphony, how many renditions are so completely disparate? Like, when you hear anything of an Irish tune as well, someone's going to have their different slant or their cut or their roll or that little nuance that makes them distinguished or brings other things to life about the piece that you didn't hear before. So, like, isn't it great that there is that variation? But yes, as you say, classical music, generally the format is we read from score, we take exactly what it is on the score, and we do not vary that. We take it like an Urtext edition.
Yes,
That
and
is
especially
definitive.
what, yeah, I noticed that the knowledge about the details which are written in the score, in urtexts, in manuscripts, have
Mm,
lost their value, and the editors, something from the second half of the 19th century, everything has changed, and people started to edit composers' work to be more understandable and to make more sense and logical without having real look into the score. Like,
mm,
for example, Beethoven liked to change, if we speak about sonatas, he changed the articulation, he notes different one in the manuscript for the string instrument and for the piano. He might write both lines for string instruments, for example, with dots, and for the piano with wedges. And the editors thought that he made a mistake. So they made a unification and put the same articulation above and down for both instruments, which made the huge which made a horrible effect
yeah,
for the duo, because if the piano and the string instrument has the same articulation, the piano has how many strings? 98, and the usual string instrument 4. So the string instrument with 4 has no chance to survive with another one with 98 strings.
yeah,
And that's why Beethoven has written this different articulation. The editors came and made an edition where everything is similar, and everyone struggles with the balance for centuries.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So like that's the other side of it. If a composer does write something down, really you should stick to that kind of. If you have kind of like the direction, stick to it. The beauty now is that people are alive. If the composer is alive, it's fine. But like I mean, they contradicted his metronomic markings, didn't they? In like some of his symphonies, etc. And thinking that it was too slow, and it wasn't. There was nothing wrong with the metronome. Even at the night, it bloody well flows really nice, nicely. Instead, it was so lighter. And this kind of heavy imposition of extra kind of like amplification in instruments,
Yeah.
that must have been a big issue as well. They didn't even think about, no, I didn't want it that way. Gosh, how, amplified it is. I wanted it light, and I didn't want it like we were going to war, like in the last of the choir sounded like they're going to war. And Norrington said, no, like, I mean, he just wanted to change it like so that they were joyful, that's what they're singing about, to joy. They're not singing about war. So this is those kind of things. They should have been, you should actually take the composer's wishes on board and what's on the score. But you also, if they're alive, go and chat to them. Maybe
Absolutely.
they're flexible enough. And like sometimes composers, they don't know an instrument. They have to have some sort of consultation. Like, I don't know how to play a bassoon, so I'd have to well, yes, I know, I've heard the sound and I understand that, but now I need to get in touch with them and say, okay, is this possible? Or can you do this or whatever? Or, and if they don't agree to it, then, well, is there another alternative? You just learn in that way. That's the great thing of having been in life, but really,
Yeah, and it just there is a contradiction between classical music, established classical music, and everyone will say, "Who is it?" So let's say this is Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart, and then all these progressive avant-garde people who are alive, and everyone is afraid to hear. But actually, let's look back. What did Bach? How progressive was he? He tempered the piano. He made this absolutely new sound for a key instrument, right?
yes, yeah,
It
of
was
course. We
it
have the
was the
48, yeah.
conservative Bach. So, and he hated everything that was conservative, and that much that he died quite quite not very old, because he tried out something very new in eye surgery. He died of undertaking in eye surgery. This was this Bach. So that's so much about conservative Bach. Okay, let's speak about Mozart. Mozart loved to try out new things, especially about scenography. So I was reading something about the premiere of Don Giovanni, and Mozart was concerned just with one thing: a papier-mâché snake, which had to have a certain appearance. He loved to impress people there with lots of innovative stuff. That's Mozart. Beethoven, loved Napoleon, and was crazy about trying out new things. So he almost co-invented the classical modern piano, which
Yeah.
sounds finally in tune and works properly.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
then if you think about it, even go back to Haydn with all the symphonies, everyone expected something different every week,
exactly.
It was
Handel
always, yeah.
with nobody, none of them has been conservative and stuck to
Yeah.
anything in the past.
Yes, but now we are supposed to stay in the past as composers. There is this problem, because the music has taken a huge, massive leap with atonality, with Schoenberg and with Webern and Berg, and has progressed since. Well, it hasn't got an endpoint, so it hasn't progressed to anything. It's just splintered into so many facets, so many styles, everything. But you still have the problem. It's a problem nobody, there's so much online anyway. No one really wants to listen to contemporary music so much anymore.
So
It's a
what would you
big.
suggest? What do you think? What can be possibly done to get this situation?
Well, I think that, if you mix up the diet, if you just put a concert on with just all classical music or baroque or something like that. I know there are specialists in both, and so I can understand that. Yeah, but like, and I mean, they have their kind of their niches. But I think if you just mixed up the diet and put in a contemporary piece
Yeah,
in every concert, then maybe there might be just much more, you know,
yeah,
there might be a diet for it then.
yeah. Maybe
See,
more.
it's
Yeah,
just people just find it like it's amazing. I've just talked about this to a few people, but you finish an artwork, you finish a piece of art, and it's up on the wall, and it can be as abstract as you want, and everybody will say, "Oh yeah, I get something from that. Yeah, might look this way or whatever." You finish a piece of music, and people just say, "Right, yeah, what on earth was going on there?" Or that really hurt my ears, or are almost incensed with you because you hurt their ears in some way. So it's like, yeah, okay, so my craft impacts on the ears. I can't help that. But what I just kind of say is, look, okay, give it a chance. It's like I have to look at a picture and sometimes come back to it and say, right, it's a blank canvas like a Rothko, but it doesn't matter. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's done. There's so many things, or a Mondrian, which is full of lines, and then you think, why on earth, or Klee or whatever. I've got to look at those and then have another perspective, and I have to be open minded. So I need to be open minded because it's the only way to be. Just don't write off something because you don't understand it.
exactly.
I mean, that's just awful. And people just say, well, I don't understand it. And you think, well, I'm not asking you to understand. It's like, Christ, I don't understand everything about maths or science or art. I wouldn't even proclaim to know much about any of these areas. But I love the fact that these things are happening, and wow, there's a beautiful equation, and it maybe ends up with naught or minus
Yeah,
one.
thickness. The
Beautiful.
if you think of that art is mirroring the society and mirroring the time and what is going on in the society, if back to times of Bach, the society and this time has sounded that way. Now, if we do not like contemporary music, which we do not understand, we have to acknowledge that this is how the time sounds. And if we want to
Yes.
change that, maybe we have to think of our society, and then the composers will receive another vibrations into something different. But it's all about the time. So art is always mirroring the time.
Yeah.
This is the situation. And then I heard, I was fascinated by your Stabat Mater, which you compose progressive, with lots of humor. But by Stabat Mater, I was completely fascinated by the fact that from the first second of the music, one can hear that this is a sacral Christian piece. How have you made it possible?
I was really I had started a Stabat Mater 10 years or so, or 20 years before that, and I really hated it. I just put it aside. I couldn't get it to grips with it at all. Then my mother got sick, and that came forth. And because she was so sick at the time, it was like a cry. So it was almost like the opposite, of the mother
Yes.
watching the son, but the daughter watching the mother. So I kind of had those feelings. So it was very intense. And I had a commission from the Chamber Choir Ireland at the time under Celso Antunes, and he was conducting. So I had that for the Cork Choral Festival. So I'm very grateful that they performed it, because I wouldn't have had a life then. And it then got into World Music Days in 2009 with Frederick Malberg and the Danish vocal ensemble at choir. And they were just fantastic. So it got performances because of that. But I'd really I really felt that scream inside, and that I just wanted to express that. And then that horror of just not knowing what was going to emerge, what was going to happen, how this was going to unfold, the whole area of not knowing why or how you're going to deal with this, not deal with it, but how you're going to help, and what can you do, the helplessness of it as well. So that's how I felt. So that's really why it came out. So it's quite an atonal piece, but it's at the same time there are parts of it that are just really kind of pulled into certain areas that are really tonal or whatever. So these are things that I suppose pull it together, and then the kind of build up on that wash of sound, and then bringing it, kind of pairing it back to just one or two notes and microtonality and that. So that really kind of gave me a good kind of outlet to explore that terrain better,
Speaking of all those measurements like microtonality, atonal music, and amplify stuff, but how do you make this music sound emotional? What is the technique of it?
I think it's dynamic and nuances. I think all those things, um, you know, the build-up of a chord, I suppose, can be quite emotional. I don't know really what makes things sometimes emotional, because I don't know how, you know, that's kind of subjective for me to think that maybe somebody will feel emotionally engaged with it. If they do, that's great, and if they get something out of it. If they don't, I can understand that too. Why should they? So I keep thinking in terms of pacing and general nuances, massive sound, etc. All these kind of elements that really help you structure something, or have something that's maybe visceral, and something that's kind of placated by just maybe a few, paired back to a few instruments, or a few voices, or the dynamic level as well. I think dynamics are really crucial in making emotional impact. I think I feel that kind of in terms of like composers that I've known that have just really a huge kind of huge variety of dynamics, from really nothing to very loud. And so all of those things shape it. But as for emotion, I don't know.
But how would you
Um,
describe the primary goal of the composer bringing a piece of music into life to the audience? That has to engage people emotionally in the first place, or is there any other thing in the background, or just to exist like a source of nature, like a forest or a sea?
I think it's sometimes like a force of nature. I think sometimes you feel like really angry or writing something, or you find that this is much calmer. It depends as well on what the brief is. Sometimes, like you have to write to a brief. Like, there was a 2018 commission by Therese Vahy to write a piece for violin and cello, um, and it was on Debussy's work. So I took two arabesques that he had, the two of them, and just wrote a violin and cello piece based on that. But I didn't write it explicitly. I just brought out one bit that was explicit. But I took loads of things and just and it went down really well, which I was quite surprised, because I thought this is probably not going to go very well. And you just don't know. I don't know really what is the secret. All I know is that I feel passionate about certain things, and there's some parts that I really want to kind of like build up, or I feel that this part should be very visceral, or there should be some sort of emotional impact, or something that comes through the music, and that you hope that somebody else will feel that as well. And I think that you can probably get those feelings through maybe just density, very parts that are not that are pared back, and dynamic levels. And of course, then resolution of very dissonance to consonant areas as well. That's really the key element. Something that's very visceral and very dissonant. Sometimes it's you don't really feel in a very emotional impact.
What could we
But
say to people, appealing to people out there, and not just to music lovers? Why is it so important to keep be keen to pay for the classical music, for contemporary music, even though one can't understand it? Why should we keep paying and invest our money into this field? What would you say?
I would say that if it's important, if we don't invest in this, you don't move further boundaries, you don't move on, you don't, maybe you miss something that's there in the zeitgeist, and you don't have any means to push it forward. And what is art? I mean, if every composer had every thought, or I mean, how many composers have been refused commissions and things in the past, or being criticized heavily, like for their work when they were considered contemporary as well. But it didn't deter them, or it didn't stop them. And I know there was a lot of, patronage was a kind of a main system for a lot of classical and Baroque composers. And this is not the system nowadays. It's all based on kind of like economics and whether it's viable. But you can't really further art, you can't let it grow, and you can't let people evolve. And culture has always been something that has given us our humanity. It humanizes us. We have to have that element of being able to engage with something outside of our day-to-day living, and we have to have elements like art to make us think. And it's always something that is necessary in any society. A society without art or music is really very barren, really. And it's a poor outlook if we just come down to economics. Plus, well-being is a huge part of well-being, to have music in your life, or to have art, to have a love of something that you love to do. That's a great thing to have. If you can get up and say, well, okay, I'm having a bad day, but I can write this piece, I can do this, this is my expression of it, or I can bring this out. People need that. You make a society better. You stop it from being engrossed maybe with the problems of trying to make ends meet, and trying to have, being a really difficult, uncivilized place to live. And the planet would be very uncivilized without it, to be honest. We really should be just encouraging this. It's good. It helps everybody develop,
Absolutely.
because there's a place for everybody. There's lots of voices in the arts. Some are very big, some
Art,
are smaller. It doesn't matter. It's that they all have a place at the table. But if you eradicate that, then you're eradicating humanity. You're eradicating what we should be, and you don't have any. Your society is far more barren, and it just, it's really a bad thing not to invest in culture.
well, for centuries and years, and even more, the art has played a huge role in the politics.
Yeah.
Would you agree with me that these two things are forever united, the art and the politics? And especially in the times of political conflicts and the war, the art is and can be used for good and bad. So you came to study to England in 1999, and this time was is quite a hard time about the conflict with IRA and the attacks. How did you feel about it while coming to study?
Uh, Gosh, that's a loaded question. I Oh gosh, I mean, it was really such a hard time, I think, for maybe a lot of Irish people over in living in England generally, because at that point, well, I started in 1995, so it was still kind of like the agreement hadn't come out until 1998, so we still had that conflict. But then there was the Omagh bombing, which was a really bad. Um, it was an awful atrocity that happened in the middle of it. Um, I was never treated badly over there, and nobody ever said to me, you know, you're Irish and so you're affiliated with this, that, and the other. Nobody ever said that to me there. I have to say that. I was treated very well in York. I mean, they couldn't have been better. I, I mean, there was this going on, but there wasn't anything really said. I mean, it wasn't something that was every day kind of in the situation, but I was aware of it, and I certainly, you know, I don't agree with violence to anybody. What's the point of that? You need to sit down and talk. And so that happened. And I think that the fact that we have peace today, that we're a model country and a model really for negotiating peace treaties and that's kind of what we've always been, I suppose, with UN and whatever else, the work that we've done abroad and our army has done. So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad the conflict is over because I really want people to live in peace, to be honest. I don't want people fighting with one another. Everybody should be able to live on the whole island without any conflict, without any aspersions to whether they're what they are, creed, color, gender, anything. They're all welcome. Everybody's welcome. And that's the way I feel about it now. And that's maybe this is the opportunity to get that across that, you know, I would see everybody as equal, and that's one of the main things. And the atrocities that carried out, they were a bad era, and we've got through that, and we've come through it. Um, and I wasn't nobody victimized me over there at all. I was nervous at times, but nobody deliberately said. And if they had, I would have taken on the chin because what else can you do? You just don't know how this affects other people.
And you are back to England in the teaching position now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm back in Ireland in a teaching position. Yeah, I'm
And
in
you enjoy that.
TUD. Yeah, I have lovely students, I have to say, and they're from all over. It's just wonderful. I mean, um, you know, I really have a broad church is how I teach and that. I've never said no really to anything. People come along and they've had things about game theory or something, and I've kind of thought, well, that's really not my field. But if I refuse this, then I don't find out. And I won't learn from it either. And I don't find out something new either. And so maybe we can help each other. So you kind of, and they have the qualifications anyway to do this. So you kind of, yeah, come in. Let's just try and explore this. Because if you don't do those things, you never know. Whereas, you know, you just don't know. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing. That's a good thing, kind of
How
like.
motivated are you to teach at the moment when the AI is growing day to day and is really about to replace composers everywhere, all over the places, and people start to play AI composed pieces? You laugh. I don't want to go into that very hard, very strong, but I had some album lately on review, which I swear is written by an AI, and you need to pretend to don't have heard that, but it's just unbelievable.
I know. Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, you can hear the little nuances kind of it sometimes like, this isn't quite finished off, or it sounds really technical at one point, or it's so precise that it's like, no, that's not human. You just know, you know, because it's so engaged with being careful about everything and replicating everything so pristinely that you kind of think, oh, wow. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I don't like AI. I mean, the only bit of kind of technology is like, okay, electronics, but I'm in control of that. I know what I'm doing there. I want to add this, or some, you know, have a printout of a score because, yeah, you just have to have it kind of legible for people. They're not going to just read kind of dots that you've come up with yourself, kind of like on a page. It doesn't look really good, you know. It maybe even hinder the performance. So from that perspective, yeah, technology is fine. But AI, do you know what? I really just prefer to use my brain, even if I'm just, I
yeah. That
really prefer. I
you've
just do.
taken this out of my. I usually like to say that if we have lost our natural teeth, we are in need to take artificial teeth.
Yeah, yeah.
And have lost our intelligence, then we really need to take the artificial one.
I look, okay, maybe people will say to me, AI, but it's really good. Like it can help with operations and that. Yeah, okay, I see the function from maybe, kind of manual labor and things like that, and maybe very intricate surgeries as well, where it's like really helpful. I don't know. Like I wouldn't write off completely on this, but I think artistically, mm, no. I just want to use my brain. That's the basic thing. I keep saying that, I know, but I mean, and by repeating, it sounds like I have some cognitive deficiency now. But yeah, but it's the best way to get something done. It's like from you, it's yours.
That's the
You did
best
it.
way to live the life in general.
Yes, yeah. You're
The-
working the muscles that you have, the gray matter. So it's
Absolutely. The most interesting thing about the AI is actually this perfection. So what makes me think of any piece of art which is made by AI is the first thing is this perfection of cliche. It's
yeah,
always a perfect cliche of what it's supposed to be. And that's not what an art, a human art is. This human art is always about the mess and imperfection which makes it actually alive. So, do you feel in danger to be replaced by the perfect artificial thing, which is supposed to replace our imperfection with a deadly perfection? Do you think this time of composer alive is about to change?
I'm not sure about that because sometimes I think that maybe replications of things or things compiled by AI are easier to maybe have as music in the background of something or whatever, or in a theater, in a space, or maybe it cuts out kind of the composer and the financial implication of hiring a composer. And that's the danger of that, really. So there is a danger of taking away a complete craft and substituting it for really something that's just very synthetic. But then again, I mean, if it's in music, so it's in art as well. I mean, you can just get an AI artist to do something with the perfect algorithm, I guess, to compile an abstract painting or a visual or whatever else. So that's the other side of it. So every artist is in danger of being wiped out at that if that's the case. And we see like how certain things have been completely eroded from television, like the proms or some of the years ago you used to have kind of a contemporary piece being played by BBC. Now they won't show contemporary piece. It's just, they'll broadcast it, but they won't actually show it on air because of the financial implications.
Mm.
And we can talk about even royalties when we think about music being played over the air as well. Composers are outdone by, all these other channels that are just putting it up for free and they don't get any royalties anymore. So it's been eroded. And that's what technology does, really. In some cases, you look back at crafts as well. There's so many crafts been lost, which are dangerous because if we, as a species, just have to hang on to technology, we're really in danger because we're losing so much of the former history we had. We don't have a backdrop, a fallback, if there's any crisis at all. And that's the problem about it. So I don't know. I will, continue just to do write and do what I do and
Use your brain.
yeah, what's left of it. Yes, yeah, I'll
Music
continue.
full of humor. I would love to keep talking to you forever, but I'm just
Oh, it's been
nearing
such a
the end.
joy.
Sadly, actually I would love to meet you again and speak about the Great Women Project and
Okay.
more other things. But for today, sadly, I have to ask you a last question, and this is: who is your favorite writer?
My favorite writer. Gosh, there's a huge amount of writers. I don't know. Um I like Dostoevsky, I think. I know that's weird to say that, but um um
Uh,
and then there's I mean, there's a huge plethora of 20th century writers as well that are fantastic. There's so many I couldn't mention nearly as well. I have a niece who's a writer as well, who's starting off, and she's wonderful, Neve. And there's it's just a huge amount. I mean,
Dostoevsky has a
I,
huge emotional impact on the reader, doesn't he?
yeah, he does. Well, actually, yeah,
You need to
I think
survive it. You need to
it's
go
massive.
through it.
Yeah,
And this is cathartic to have survived until the last page.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Shakespeare is great as well. I mean, I mean, there's a whole lot of writers out there that are just incredible nowadays. And now that I'm even thinking, I just can't think of it, and my head has gone completely blank.
Yeah,
uh,
that's
it's
a
just,
good,
yeah,
because the good
yeah.
news, there are plenty of, and we hope that, there is, I would say every composer has somewhere a sibling, I mean, of course, the spiritual sibling, a writer, who is in a way the same thing in the field, in the music of the written word. So do you have anybody you could call your spiritual writing sibling, which reflects your compositions?
Um,
Just
Writing
to be
as in
alive.
an author or something like
Yes,
that.
and the author. So someone whose writes, whose pieces of written word are in a way reflecting your music. It doesn't have to be alive. It can be someone who has.
Well, actually, I worked with a writer, Anne Hartigan, and she was really amazing. She was very a visceral writer. She was very unafraid, and her opera. I based her opera on a play that she wrote called La Corbière. She was very fearless about expressing horrors and that. And the Corbière is kind of about Nazi, a shipload of women who were prostitutes, and they were just brought over to Jersey Island in 1941,
Mhm.
just for entertainment, just for Nazi soldiers' entertainment. But because they were old, they were shipped back again, and their boat went down at the lighthouse in Corbière, and they were never reclaimed. Their bodies were there for days in the sea, and no one came to look for them. They were just nothing. There were nobodies to nobody, so nobody cared. So it was an awful. It's a harrowing story. So she'd be really one writer that I can think who's just dead a couple of years now, but she was wonderful. I really she was in her 90s when she died. So that really I would find an affinity with her. Then
Oh,
there's other writers like Tia Dorgan, or there's a whole plethora of different writers, and then we have Yeats, and we have, we have a huge slew of writers. Joyce would be one of my now as well that I'd really, or Beckett. Beckett is fantastic, because failed better, and and I'm just saying the cliche, but still the whole idea of struggle, and human struggle and human existence, and the kind of cry for for some sort of humanity. And um, then I had a bit of delving into Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, which is a really rude awakening into everything. But yeah, so when I think of it, there are great writers. We have great writers, and all have an impact in some way. Um, and because it's such a big part of our culture as well, you can't not be influenced by what's going on or what people are doing. But I really liked Anne Hartigan's work, and I'm sad that she's not around now. So like,
I can't wait to explore the Corbière. I saw it on your list, and I'm really keen to dive into that. And before I will leave you have another part of the day, you are free to ask me any question of your preference.
um, I'm just curious about your fusion with Irish music. Did you play with many different artists, or when did you, or what has?
Yeah, I worked with an Irish composer. His name is Garth Knox,
Ah,
and I commissioned a piece. I was exploring the Eugene Isaïe sonatas for violin solo, which I recorded in a version for viola solo, all six of them.
wow,
And I asked Garth to write a piece for viola solo, which is a homage to Isaïe's work because they're very similar, both of them,
yes,
in a way. And he did that, and I've got another three pieces which I put into this program, onto that album. So I had a homage to Isai with just contemporary pieces which are dedicated to Isai, which I commissioned. And on the other CD, I went backwards to the roots and brought up the Biber Passacaglia of the Baroque, where
Yeah.
and the Bach Chaconne, where it all started. And it has been all about polyphone writing, which has um, a connection to the ethnic sources, because Isai did that. So that's how I came about this Irish music, that close, very, very close. And I felt so home.
Really?
Yeah,
That's fascinating. That's really great. Yeah, yeah. I didn't realize that. So you're a viola player
I've
and
been
and
in my past.
and you're a violin player and viola player.
Yes, I was
Great.
for 25 years.
My God. Wow.
But
Fantastic.
time
Fantastic.
changes. Anyways, thank you so much for
Okay.
your time. I look forward to welcome you back at the Watchman in conversation again.
Thank you.
And have a nice day ahead. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Hannah. Take care. Thanks. Bye bye.